Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Wanted to reach out to you this afternoon and introduce you to one of my good friends here, Spencer Call. He's a personal injury attorney with Bighorn Law Firm here in the Valley, and I want to talk about a little bit of information with him about coverages. See if we can get some education out there for all of you on the importance of coverages. Spencer, thank you for meeting with me this afternoon. It's good to see you.
Happy to do it, Brooks. Good to meet you today as well, and be able to talk to your clients about what coverages they can have and what they need in order to protect them here in Arizona.
Well, thanks again for giving us some of your time, and hopefully it'll be valuable for everybody watching today. So from a legal standpoint, Spencer, what would you say is a right amount or advisable amount of coverage to consider yourself comfortable as a driver?
Well, that's a good question, Brooks, and it really gets to the heart of what insurance, automobile insurance, does to protect you here in Arizona. And so the first question you have to ask yourself is, what do I have to protect? Do I have a house? Do I have bank accounts with money in them? Do I have investment accounts? Do I have other cars that I'm wanting to protect from potential liability? Because insurance really serves two purposes. And the first purpose is to protect other people from you. So if you cause an accident, your state coverage that is required, minimal limits in Arizona right now is 15,000 to 30,000, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, plus $10,000 in property damage. And then you can get other coverages to protect yourself on it, and you can increase those amounts depending on what you have out there to protect. But so the first question is, what do you have to protect? And you have to look at what you have and make a decision based on that. Because when you cause an accident, God forbid you cause one, you have to understand that that person's coming after you for their losses. And so you're trying to protect those things. And so you have to figure out what it is do I have to protect. And then the second question is, what do I need to have insurance-wise to protect myself from everybody else? Because most of the accidents that you're going to get into in your life, you're not going to be the one that caused them. You're going to be the victim. And so you have to have particular coverages in order to protect yourself from other people.
Right. So what would you say about that? If someone's underinsured or uninsured, what kind of advice would you give to them if they're not carrying the coverage that they need on their end?
So as you know, as an insurance broker, in Arizona, in order to get underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage, you have to first have liability coverage. And in 99% of the cases I've seen, your underinsured coverage can't exceed your third-party liability coverage. And so if you want to protect yourself from other people, you've got to have enough liability coverage that you can also get comparable underinsured, uninsured coverage. And it might make sense if we took a minute just to explain the different coverages that are out there to people, because they come into play with me every day.
Right.
And so the first coverage that everybody knows about is what the state makes you have. That's 15,000 to 30,000 to cover bodily injury against third parties and $10,000 in property damage coverage. And folks should know that in July of this year, those limits are actually going up. It will be 25,000 and 50,000 on the bodily injury, and 20,000, I believe, on the property damage.
Right.
And one of the reasons those are going up is because today's cars cost so much more than they used to. The last time Arizona changed their policy limits was 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, you could buy a decent car for 15 to 20,000. Today, you're going to be dropping $30,000 to $40,000 on pretty much any nice car that's out there. So if you hit a brand new car in an accident, instantly you could be doing $10,000, $20,000 worth of damages, and you want to make sure that your car's protected, and that if you hit someone else, that you have enough protection to protect yourself. So it's a good thing those limits are going up. And just to explain what that $15,000, $30,000 means is that if you get in an accident, any one person, if you have 1530 coverage, any one person can get up to $15,000 in coverage for their bodily injury, with a total of $30,000 for everybody that's involved. So if you hit a car that has 6 people in it and you have 15,000, 30,000 coverage, you better hope their medical bills aren't higher than 30,000 cumulatively, because they might be coming after you personally if it's not. Okay. Then the next coverage after that people typically see on their policy is comprehensive coverage. That's what protects you if a tree falls on your car while it's parked in your driveway and damages it. Then your insurance company, minus your deductible, will help pay for the repairs. The next is collision coverage. That's if you get into an accident or someone hit your car, you hit someone else's car, your insurance company will pay for the repairs, less your deductible again. Often tied to that will be rental car coverage. If you need to be able to get a car quickly, if you get in an accident, that's good to have. And then the next type of coverage typically is your medical payments coverage. We just call it MedPay for short here in Arizona. And that's a certain amount that your insurance company will pay to cover medical bills, regardless of whose fault the accident was. So it's generally a good idea to have it just to protect yourself as well. And then the last type of coverage that we've mentioned already is your uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. And that's really the coverage that you use to protect yourself from other people, because there's a lot of people out there on the roads who don't have coverage. They intentionally aren't paying for insurance, or they've let their policy lapse, or they simply don't have enough coverage and you get seriously hurt in an accident. Which sort of brings me to what your original question was, what makes you comfortable, right?
Right.
And so a typical accident in Arizona is probably going to have somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 worth of bodily injury damage. And the typical property damage that I see, the bulk of them are low, probably in the 3,000 range, but it's not uncommon to see property damage in excess of 10 or 15, especially on newer vehicles. So you've got to look at those numbers and say, what am I going to do to protect myself if the other person has no insurance, or they only have the minimal coverage of 15,000, 30,000? I'll tell you, an ER bill. So if you get hit hard enough, you go to the ER and you go to any hospital here in the Valley, they're going to charge you at least $6,000 just to go be seen by the ER physician and for them to tell you you're okay. If they do any imaging with a CT scanner because you hit your head in the car, or an MRI because there's a more serious impact, that's going to add $2,000 to $10,000 to your bill. So if you get in an accident where your head hits the steering wheel, your side window, or any other part of your car, and you tell that to them at the ER and they say, do you have headaches? And you say yes, they're going to run you through a CT scanner. Your ER bill alone is going to be $12,000. That's before you've gotten any other treatment to help protect you. And so if the other person is only carrying minimal limits, then you're now unprotected, because you've got other injuries that you want to care for and other problems that you're going to have that there just won't be money to pay for unless you've got your own policy protecting you.
Right. Exactly. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes with coverage, not only having the upfront coverage, but knowing what it's going to cost you if something does happen. That's why it's important to know your coverages to make sure that you protect yourself. So looking at all things considered, Spencer, as a legal professional, what advice would you give to drivers on the road today when it comes to their insurance coverage?
Well, first thing is if you think you have full coverage, you better look at your declarations page and check it out, because I'm willing to bet you don't. I have clients who tell me that all the time, and when we do a review with them, they're short on coverage. They don't have rental car coverage. They don't have medical pay coverage. They don't have underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage. And I understand that it costs money to have those coverages, and sometimes you have to make a tough choice.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at what's going to happen when I get into an accident, because really it's not a question of if you get into an accident, it's a question of when you will get into an accident, because it happens to all of us. It doesn't matter how good of a driver you are, at some point someone's going to hit you because they're careless, not because you're careless. And so you really got to look at that and decide, what coverages do I have, and then what is it that I'm trying to protect, and understanding that if you have kids that you regularly transport in a car, or a spouse that you regularly transport in your car with you, if you have minimal coverage, even minimal underinsured, uninsured coverage, one of you could eat up that coverage. Two of you almost certainly will. If you have 2 or 3 kids in there and they need to get treated at the ER and checked out by the doctor, that $30,000 with today's medical prices gets eaten up very, very fast. And so you want to make sure that you've got protection that's going to allow you to get not just to the hospital, to the ER, but to a physical therapist or a chiropractor, or to a neurologist if you have a head injury, and make sure that all those bills are going to be covered and paid for, so you're not coming out of pocket for them.
That's a lot to consider. I hope that you've learned a lot today. And if you do have any questions, that's what I'm here for as your insurance agent, to go over those things. So that way, hopefully, you don't end up in a position where you need to talk to a personal injury attorney, or on the other end of being too short on your coverage. Give me a call. Send me an email. Let me know what I can do to help you out, and we'll make sure to go over what you have already and make sure that you're fully covered. Spencer, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to meet with you, and we'll look forward to talking with you again.
Absolutely, Brooks. Thank you.